G'day, Rockhound here. What does it require for a game to become the ultimate realistic open world multiplayer survival shooter? Is it some element that DayZ, Scum, Deadside, or could the upcoming game Dead Matter have or will have? It's a question I've been pondering lately, and the aim of this video is to present my view on how an answer to that question can be resolved and discuss what those 4 games offer to the survival shooter genre. I've chosen DayZ, Scum, Deadside and Dead Matter because I think these are the games that currently stand the greatest chance of fulfilling the role of the best survival shooter game around. But that doesn't mean other games can't join this group. I'd like to briefly mention that there's 2 games I've chosen not to include here, and that's Rust and Miscreated. I'm omitting Rust because I think it doesn't have a particularly realistic environment or overall look to it, and I'm omitting Miscreated because unfortunately it has a very low player base along with mixed reviews on Steam, making its current chances of success exceedingly low. You might like to check out those games for yourself and make your own comparisons. Now, this video is not short, so if you're limited on time, I suggest you check out the timestamps in the video description below and skip to the bits you're interested in. Following the introduction, where I discuss what I think are some key features that can greatly help a game to become the ultimate survival shooter, I'm going to give you a summary of each game, including where its development is heading, then discuss the pros and cons of the game, as well as give my thoughts on whether it's good value for money. But let's set the scene first. Within the survival shooter genre, I've noticed some strikingly contrasting statistics that I consider to be a significant clue to understanding how we might best judge the ability of any realistic open world survival shooter to be successful. In August 2012, just a few months after its release, the DayZ mod for Arma 2 had registered more than 1 million unique users, and its successor, DayZ Standalone, also sold over 1 million copies, with the first 400,000 copies being sold in just the first week of the game's release in 2013. Backing these numbers up, content creator FRANKIEonPC's DayZ series, which started in July 2012, is one of the most popular gameplay series ever, with the first episode of his DayZ mod series now having had over 8.2 million views, and the third episode of his DayZ Standalone series topping an astonishing 10 million views. If you take a look at the comments section of that first DayZ mod video, you'll see there are still people rewatching the series in 2020, with over 600 likes for this comment saying just that. These are all impressive numbers, and impressive longevity for Frankie's series as well. Now, as a brief but important aside, for those of you like myself that enjoyed Frankie's videos, you'll be delighted to know that Frankie will be returning to YouTube full-time in the next couple of months, and he'll also be streaming on Twitch, which is awesome news. That info was announced in a recent video by SadaPlays, which I've also put a link to in the video description below. I'll mention Sada's video again later in this video for another reason though. For now, let's get back to the subject. Okay, we've looked at the numbers reflecting DayZ's rise to fame, but what about its descent? By August 2018, DayZ Standalone had fallen to an average player count on Steam charts of a meager 1,597. What do those contrasting numbers tell us about what it takes to make the ultimate realistic open world survival shooter? The ongoing popularity of FRANKIEonPC's channel, despite not having uploaded a video for the last 3 years, tells us that viewers love what Frankie presented, and that was his version of DayZ. Compelling stories that captured his DayZ adventures, each of which had an unknown outcome, and included action-packed, humorous and random encounters with a wide variety of players in a wide variety of situations, with a few mediocre zombies thrown in. There's definitely a desire from players to be part of an adventure that includes exploration of a large realistic environment, hand-to-mouth survival, close and unique encounters with other players and smart AI alike, And perhaps more importantly, players want options that allow them to do all of that in their own unique style. I believe these are the key components that compel players to spend hours watching someone else like Frankie playing, or to buy the game themselves and dive in boots and all and stick with a game for years or until another game fulfills the same role but better. If there's a compelling story, there's a compelling reason to be part of it. So what happened with DayZ Standalone? Well, the game's early access phase was a painfully long process, starting in 2013 with the game only finally releasing in December 2018. During that time, many players lost interest because they couldn't vary the storyline themselves enough to make it interesting. There was no modding and no base building during early access. Plus the game was, and unfortunately still is, pretty buggy. The DayZ mod for Arma 2, on the other hand, had freedom of choice. Modders made multiple playstyles available for players. You could play the slow, cautious, nomadic game, or play a fast-paced epoch mod, full of vehicles, bases, and clan rivalry. The extensive modding was a key to players having a wide choice of playstyles and a wide choice of stories. The modding and base building in the game allowed base raids and base defense to become a significant part of DayZ's endgame. But when DayZ Standalone arrived, that all disappeared. DayZ Standalone, during early access, really only catered for the nomads. For the majority of players, they went from having a game with mods and base building that they loved, to having a better looking game that didn't have some of the features most important to their style of adventure. They could no longer be their own Frankie. Instead, they were forced to play the game one way. The player base slowly decreased over the following 5 years, and I'm sure that there were lots of players that had tried to make DayZ Standalone their own, but without modding and without a decent endgame, they gradually became bored and logged off for the final time. Now, there is definitely more to the DayZ story, but just for a moment, let's move on. Taking into account the impact that those changes to DayZ saw, if we were to simply compare DayZ, Scum, Deadside or Dead Matter side by side and just ask which game is going to be best, I believe it actually misses a more important question, and that question is, out of the current or upcoming games in the genre, which one will best allow players to create and become immersed in their own stories, and tell those stories just like Frankie did, in addition to being a competent game. And by competent, I mean that the game looks good, works well, is reasonably intuitive to learn, and doesn't have features or bugs that infuriate players. Okay, let's consider these factors with each of the 4 games, along with their own unique features, and then consider their value for money. First up, DayZ. We've already covered the issues that the game had in the past, but what's the rest of the DayZ story? Where's the game at in 2020 and where is it heading to? Thankfully, modding and base building were finally added to the game in late 2018 as the game went to full release, and this actually appears to be drawing players back to the game, with player numbers rising steadily since late 2018. Those numbers now sit at about 2/3 of where they were when DayZ Standalone first released. DayZ is, apparently, making an impressive comeback. Even more importantly, there is an excellent mod for DayZ in the works, which is called the DayZ Expansion Mod. The mod is currently in closed testing and will add to the game 4 types of helicopters, planes, 2 small boats, 2 amphibious vehicles, a transit bus, and get this, a drivable aircraft carrier, as well as RPGs, an M72 Law, an M79 grenade launcher, a crossbow, and loads of new guns. It also brings side chat, airdrops, improved base building and raiding, traders, a squad system, and a revised map which gives it a more apocalyptic feel. Importantly, the mod is also going to be free. While there isn't an official release date for the mod, the devs have said it will be soon. Now, you can check out some footage from the expansion mod in SadaPlays video that I mentioned earlier. All around, this is brilliant news for DayZ. DayZ Standalone's developer, Bohemia Interactive, have also said that they intend to continue providing improvements to modding and base building through 2020, as well as add content like new weapons and game mechanics like broken legs for characters, which was a familiar core element of the original DayZ Arma 2 mod experience. Having said that, Bohemia also said in a blog post in February that the development team for DayZ is now a much smaller group, with staff having been moved onto other projects, so don't expect other huge changes to the vanilla game anytime soon, but hopefully the DayZ Expansion Mod makes up for that. Despite player numbers being on the rise and mods in the works, DayZ still has its issues. The game is still buggy, the AI zombies are still pretty clunky and not particularly threatening, but DayZ's bleak environmental colour palette fits the post-apocalyptic infected world perfectly, and the game also uses what is more or less a real-world map, with the Chernarus map being 225 square kilometres and the recent Livonia DLC map being around 163 square kilometres. One of DayZ's great strengths is that the environment provides a realistic atmosphere that allows players to fully immerse themselves. I've read many comments from long-time DayZ players saying that they experience genuine fear while moving around the map. DayZ does not feel like you're taking a stroll in the park. It has a dark edge and an X factor that continues to draw players into it. However, because the standalone game's development took so long, I think it would now be fair to say that the game's overall graphics are pretty outdated and well below par for what new players might expect from a modern survival shooter. In particular, textures around buildings and objects are pretty basic. This could lead to players who are new to DayZ jumping in for an hour or so, not liking the look of it and just choosing to get a refund on the game. In other words, first impressions are important, and the graphics could potentially be blocking new players from becoming immersed in DayZ. When we account for all these positives and negatives and then see DayZ being sold for $45 US or $59 if you want to include the new Livonia map, the game that was once so iconic sadly now seems a bit overpriced. If you're considering picking up the game for the first time, I think you'd want to know what price you are comfortable paying for a game that you may eventually decide just doesn't provide you with enough to create your own immersive story. Having said that, a growing audience, including the return of DayZ videos from Frankie soon, tells us that immersion and storytelling in DayZ is still viable. It still holds that X factor and might do even more so when the DayZ Expansion Mod becomes available. How important is a great looking game versus storytelling to you is perhaps the key question you need to ask when you're considering buying DayZ, because you won't have both. Lastly, I think that the crown of immersion that DayZ continues to hold is well and truly ripe for stealing by any game that can deliver the most important features that DayZ and the DayZ Expansion Mod will offer, but that also looks great and runs well. Could one of the other three games do that? Let's move on and take a look. Next up, we have Scum. Scum shares many similarities to DayZ. You spawn into the map, you comb the buildings across the countryside for loot and try to get geared up, while making sure that you eat and drink enough to keep your energy up, so that you can take on zombie-like AI known as puppets, or covertly avoid giant walking robots known as mechs that fiercely guard high loot locations. When Scum began early access in August 2018, it sold a heap of copies, over 1 million in fact, again showing the support players have for the survival shooter genre. The game got off to a bit of a rocky start, however, due to a lack of meaningful content, buggy gameplay, in-game hackers, and game mechanics that needed plenty of work. These things saw Scum's initial player base dwindle rapidly. I myself was one of those people that experienced all of those things, and I left too. However, the game has continued to have a reasonably steady player base, averaging around 2,500 to 3,000 players online at any one time. I recently jumped back into Scum to see what it's like. Compared to DayZ, the game's graphics look great, and its environmental colour palette is significantly more colourful, which can at times actually make you feel like you're just going for a nice stroll in the countryside. It doesn't really have that bleak dystopian edge to it that DayZ has, which seems to be an important factor in creating immersion and fear for your character. At 144 square kilometers, Scum's map is around 2/3 of the size of DayZ's Chinaris map. There's lots of variety in the villages, military outposts, and other points of interest you find across the map, including bunkers that are hidden amongst the trees in the forest. The puppets you encounter are much more aggressive and meaningful to the game than those seen in DayZ, and sometimes you'll stumble across them actually sleeping on the floor in random rooms that you're exploring, which can give you a decent fright when they suddenly stand up and rush you. The game has an extensive character health management system, with virtually every detail about your character's metabolic state being provided, right down to vitamin levels. And this is something that the devs intend to continue developing, although some players comment that it's unnecessarily detailed. Likewise, there's an extensive choice of balanced physical and mental traits that you can choose from when creating your character for the first time. Scum has a comprehensive and relatively user-friendly crafting system, which allows new players to fashion rudimentary weapons and a backpack early on in the game. There is also considerably more loot scattered around Scum's map than you see in vanilla DayZ, which unlike Scum seems pretty determined to see your character starve to death before you even feel like you're able to get going. One of Scum's biggest downsides though is that it currently lacks any modding, so playing styles and therefore story styles will be limited. Although Gamepires, the studio developing the game, do plan to add this in the future, which is great to hear, especially considering what we've discussed earlier in this video. Base building in the game appears to need work because by all accounts it's a real grind and the bases have limited features. Having said that, you can now modify existing buildings to make a base, which is an excellent addition. And in a recent patch, additional base building features were added, showing that the dev team is keen to improve this part of the game. While playing Scum recently, I found that interactions with puppets were relatively rare, and they probably should be increased more towards DayZ zombie levels. I also didn't encounter a single real player over the few hours that I was in the game, although I was mostly looting in backcountry locations the whole time because of where I spawned in. The lack of interactions did make the game feel a bit more like a looting and crafting simulator, but I felt like I did start to create my own adventures in the game by being able to gear up at a reasonable pace. However, longevity might be an issue without any strong endgame elements in Scum. At $30 US, I think Scum represents fair value, provided the devs continue to develop key elements such as improving the overall atmosphere of the game, and adding modding that will allow new story opportunities for players to emerge. If Scum can do those things and do them well, it could see a significant increase in popularity, but it might not do that right away. Thirdly, we have Deadside. This game, which is being developed by a small independent Russian studio called Bad Pixel, only went into early access on the 14th of April this year, and unlike the other three games discussed here, it lacks fantastic elements like zombies or puppets. Instead, you engage with other players and AI militants and civilians that currently patrol the roads, and a series of bases and villages scattered around the map. The game features missions of varying difficulty levels where, if successful, you can secure access to a loot crate that includes high-tier weapons, other gear, and cash. The AI provide aggressive opponents whose aim can at times be laser-like. Loot on the AI varies, but the military AI can carry decent weapons like the Mosin. However, there are no telescopic optics in the game at present. Overall gunplay in the game is pretty solid, and I look forward to seeing this being developed as the game progresses through early access. It's pretty easy to find a weapon quickly in Deadside, and weapons always come with ammo. Plus you'll find additional ammo pretty easily as well while looting. This allows you to grab a gun and get into the action quickly, far quicker than you will in DayZ or Scum. There is currently a simple squad system which marks your teammates with a tag so you don't team kill them, and the system also allows them to open the doors on your base. However, if you log out, you need to physically find your friends on the map to rejoin their squad, which is a bit tedious. When you log in, you have some very basic choices about your character's appearance as well. The survival elements are pretty casual in Deadside, with your character only requiring to eat canned food and drink soda to maintain healthy hydration and energy levels. So this is really an open world multiplayer shooter with survival elements. Sterile bandages can be crafted with rags and vodka or moonshine for healing up if you take damage during gunplay, or you can buy them. There are 2 safe zones on the 25 square kilometre early access map where you can buy and sell items from traders, as well as use limited storage space. The map is planned to gradually expand to 225 square kilometres, the same size as DayZ's Chinaris map, as the game develops through early access, and the number of safe zones will increase, as well as land and waterborne vehicles being added. The game has a realistic looking environment, which perhaps unsurprisingly is a bit light on content at this stage of development. The game does include basic crafting and base building, although bases currently cannot be raided, so there's limited end game elements so far. The devs also plan to allow players to have small stashes of gear scattered around the map, possibly using camouflage tents, however the details on this are a bit vague. Additional loot items like watches and car batteries, amongst other things, can be cashed in at the traders, allowing you to purchase upgraded gear and weapons if you prefer not to search for them, take them off downed opponents, or capture them through completing missions successfully. For an early access game, Deadside runs very smoothly, with only occasional bugs, and the game looks great, resulting in very positive reviews on Steam already. However, reflecting on the factors I mentioned earlier that can influence the long-term popularity of survival shooters, it's not known if Deadside will offer modding or extensive end-game elements, and overall I would say that there's really not a huge amount of info being provided by the developers, at least not enough to allow us to make a reasonable judgment of Deadside's ability to provide good story opportunities or end-game encounters. And that's possibly the game's biggest unknown at the moment. If you want to learn more about the game, I suggest that you take a look at the Deadside Discord, a link for which is in the video description below. At $20 US, Deadside is the cheapest of the 4 games discussed here. So if you're looking for a survival shooter that's light on the survival element and has no zombies, and understand that you're supporting the development of a game without necessarily knowing all the directions the game might take, all the content it will have, or its potential storytelling ability, I would call it reasonable value. I look forward to seeing where the devs take Deadside, but at this stage it's still a bit of an unknown. It's perhaps one that you might want to watch closely for a while before leaping in. Lastly, we have an ambitious game that is currently scheduled to begin closed alpha testing in June this year, and is scheduled for an early access release in early 2021. Originally, Dead Matter was due to have its closed alpha testing start way back in February 2018. However, it was delayed to March 2019, then again to the end of summer 2019, then again to March 2020, and then for a 4th time to June 2020. Long-time subscribers to my channel will know that delays like this, while annoying, are not uncommon, especially with smaller independent development studios. However, delays can also greatly erode the confidence of the players who have backed the game prior to access and those who are considering backing the game. In this instance, however, it seems that the majority of Dead Matter's backers have been very supportive of the delays, saying they'd prefer the game to be good rather than on time, and I'll come back to that point shortly. Dead Matter markets itself as a true sandbox survival horror. Unlike the other 3 games, this survival shooter, which is set in Alberta, Canada, will place the game's zombies as the primary antagonists. Dead Matter's zombies will form hordes up to 100 strong, and unlike DayZ and Scum, where you can run inside a building and close the door to safely protect yourself, in Dead Matter, they will actually start to break into the building you're in. They'll also be attracted to signs of your presence. For instance, if you fire your weapon, they'll all head in your direction, Or if you're in a building at night and have a light on and there's no other buildings around you with their lights on, the zombies will move to your building to see if there's anyone inside. Dead Matter's small group of around 20 developers, called QI Software, want to make their zombies a meaningful part of the game, and in many ways I think this makes so much sense. If you're in a zombie apocalypse, then the zombies should definitely play a significant part in your story, and not simply be annoyances like they are in DayZ or Scum. Importantly, the game mechanics of Dead Matter on each server will change over time. The developers call this process Decaying Substance, and it's one of the key ways they aim to make the game more immersive than other games in the genre. For instance, the community electricity grids will eventually fail, requiring you to connect a generator to your base to provide power for cooking and lights. Lootable items will start to become more scarce over time, and even the zombies will start to slow down. This could see a gradual shift in playing style on your server from a loot for food and zombie killing game to a game where you have to hunt animals and grow crops in greenhouses that you construct, as well as finding yourself engaging with other players in order to secure the resources that you need to survive. The game's catchphrase is "plan accordingly," and it sounds like those will be words to live by, literally. Bases in Dead Matter won't be standalone buildings that you construct, although building small storage huts will be possible. Instead, if you want a proper base, you'll need to reinforce an existing building just like you might in a real-world apocalypse. That will make choosing the right building extra important. For instance, do you select a fire station because it has a good supply of clean water? Or the police station because it has weapons and might already be partly reinforced? Or is choosing a house in the burbs a better choice because you're less likely to be discovered? Alternatively, if you want, you can pitch a tent in the wilderness, live off the land, and only venture into built-up areas for strategic missions. The maps, that's right, maps plural, for Dead Matter, will start in June's closed alpha with a small 25 square kilometre area of southern Alberta that will eventually expand to be 256 square kilometres. The second map will be a dense city map of Calgary, which will be 36 square kilometres. And down the track, a DLC map for Vancouver Island will be released with a yet-to-be-determined size. Now for the southern Alberta and Calgary maps, the plan is that you should be able to move between the two maps relatively seamlessly with minimal disruption to the flow of the game. The decision by the devs to use two maps was to allow the game to run smoothly, as well as allowing a significant built-up area to be used as a map, which is not something most other survival games offer. The devs have mentioned that they want to make the southern Alberta map more interesting than DayZ's maps by avoiding having large swaths of empty land. There will also be plenty of below ground areas, including sewers, bunkers and train stations. They've also shown some footage of procedurally generated bunkers being created, which can allow underground complexes on each server to be unique. The devs have said that having a sense of exploration and discovery is something they feel is very important for players. Weather will also play a significant role in the game, with gradual changes in the seasons, along with weather that is modelled on actual historical weather readings from Calgary. Factors including temperature, wind strength and direction, air pressure, humidity and precipitation are all included in the weather system. A change in the dew point could result in a change from rain to snow, for instance, and temperature will change with the time of day. The moon and sun will also follow realistic patterns, including lunar phases, which you might want to take into account if you're planning on undertaking night missions. Time in-game is currently planned to pass 5 times faster than in real life, although this might change through the closed alpha test. This all sounds fantastic, and it's one of the elements of the game I'm very much looking forward to. A wide selection of vehicles will eventually be included in Dead Matter, including bikes, motorcycles, cars, SUVs, pickup trucks, box trucks, tractors, ATVs, planes, helicopters and trains, and boats. Towables, like trailers, will also be added. The devs intend to make vehicles relatively easy to acquire and get going, unlike those in DayZ. so that you could spawn in and make finding a vehicle for transport one of your first goals. This reflects one of the dev's primary objectives with Dead Matter, which is to get away from the typical loot, shoot and die loop that has become quite a grind for games in the survival shooter genre. The inventory system that we've seen so far from the dev team's vlogs is reminiscent of the system from Escape from Tarkov, and this speaks to a comment made by one of the dev team recently about the game overall, and that is that they're not trying to make everything about the game unique, but that one of the key goals is to just do things well. So that means that they will be cherry picking many of the best features from other games. And this is one of the advantages Dead Matter has. Arriving into the survival shooter genre now, the devs really can innovate on previous attempts by other games, or where innovation isn't required, simply repeat what already works well. Dead Matter will have its own nuances though, and returning to the inventory system, an example of that will be potentially being able to store a knife in your boot. The inventory will have 2 primary weapon slots, but additional items like large backpacks will potentially allow you to carry more, and I think that's sensible. I like the idea of carrying a close quarters weapon, a sniper rifle, and having another space available to pick up another primary weapon during my travels. The devs want interactions and looting in the game to be pretty realistic. So when you go into a house, you'll open up drawers and cupboards, switch on light switches, and you can either close the curtains or use newspaper and glue to block out the windows, and that'll stop prying eyes from seeing you. Just don't stand behind the curtain at night with a light on, or you might have an early night. There will be AI traders available during the closed alpha, and AI factions that you can complete simple missions for. Completing a mission for one faction, however, may reduce your reputation with another, so you have to be strategic about your choices, or perhaps be willing to be wholeheartedly supporting a particular faction, whatever the consequences. Importantly, the devs have said that they are keen for players to create their own long-term stories, and they also intend to provide extensive modding support, which could see Dead Matter take some interesting new paths and perhaps take on DayZ head-to-head. These are all positive ideas from the developers of Dead Matter, but will the execution be great? From the footage I've seen so far, and reflecting on the symptoms of impending failure that were present for Maverick's Proving Grounds, the previous open-world shooter that I followed in detail during its development, I believe Dead Matter's developers may currently have some serious issues to overcome if they want their game to be successful, and as such, I want to take this opportunity to offer some constructive criticism, because I would really love to see Dead Matter succeed. Specifically, well, it's fine for a small independent group of devs like QI Software to be making an ambitious game like Dead Matter. After all, that's kind of how DayZ started. Even if this might mean that there's a few extra delays and a longer development cycle than some games, this doesn't mean that those same devs are the best ones to undertake the public relations and marketing for the game. In fact, doing so could result in failure of the game, and I believe that Dead Matter is at risk of this happening. As an example, back in mid-March, Dead Matter's talented lead developer, Nick Zorko, appeared as a guest on a live stream for Twitch Calgary. The outcomes from that stream are what I would call a PR disaster. Comments from the Dead Matter community about the gameplay shown during that stream were largely negative, saying things like, "I can't wait to play, but looking at this gameplay, it's probably going to take a while." Or, "Wow, this is a massive disappointment. Got the impression from previous videos that the game was a lot more advanced than this." Or, "WTF, they were going to release this? Bad performance. It's just fog and feels empty." Or, "This game does not look good from the first 20 seconds. The comments go on and on like this. In addition, during the stream, Nick was still downloading the latest build of the game and clearly wasn't even fully prepared for the stream when it started. It was poorly planned and poorly executed. I believe that just because a dev team is small and might have members who work from home does not give a hall pass for a developer to provide dismal marketing and PR. In my view, the role of marketing and PR for a game like Dead Matter, where potential players get to see works in progress as the game develops, includes some key tasks. Firstly, they need, without embellishment, to make it very clear what the game is going to be like, including carefully setting players' expectations for the quality of the game at all stages, along with setting their expectations around when they will get access to it. In addition, they need to make sure that any and all presentations of the game to the public, what I call being on stage, are carefully planned and managed in order to match the expectations that they have been setting up to that point. Setting players' expectations too high and then presenting something to them that doesn't match those expectations is going to massively erode the trust backers and potential backers have in the developer's ability to create the game they're hoping for. That Twitch stream clearly did that. As well as that amateurish presentation, pretty much every recent video of Dead Matter gameplay shown has included significant environmental fog, which some players have started to conclude is actually being used as a way to reduce the level of detail the game needs to show so it can run smoothly. The Dead Matter world also looks pretty empty. Now, if the devs think that they can talk in depth in their dev vlogs about all the features that the game will include, and they all sound fantastic, but then show mismatching gameplay like they did in March, then they're not going to have a strong player base, let alone a player base that will show patience as the game develops through the closed alpha. I think that QI Software needs to accept that they are currently underskilled on the marketing and PR front, and immediately invest in hiring an experienced marketing and PR person to guide them through the on-stage portion of presenting the game to the public, even if that means delaying the game further. Our expectations must be set well, and we must feel like each presentation they make to us about the game and about access dates matches our previous expectations. Now, I closely watched Maverick's Proving Grounds fail to take these steps until it was way too late, and that game crashed and burned. I also think that I wasn't vocal enough in my content creation as I watched that game's failure unfold, and I won't make that mistake twice. That's why I need to say that I think Dead Matter is potentially heading in the same direction. I hope that the dev team are honest with themselves when they answer the question, do we have the skill base and experience to market this game and market it well? If the answer to that question is no, then they need to resolve that issue immediately. QI Software, please don't let Dead Matter fail because of poor marketing and PR. Marketing and PR is not something to be taken lightly. It is a significant part of a game's development that needs skilled specialists working at it, because you absolutely must have the community on your side. Okay, I think I've said enough about that. Rant over. For those of you that do want to support the development of Dead Matter, backer packs start from $35 and these provide access to the closed alpha in June, as well as a copy of the game at release. From a value point of view, if you're happy to support a game that's very much in development and assume that the developers are able to achieve most of what's on their roadmap and sort their marketing situation, then Dead Matter could well take DayZ's crown as the best survival shooter around, do it at about 3/4 of the price of DayZ, as well as breathe new life into a genre that hasn't seen very much innovation since the DayZ mod for Arma 2 first arrived on the scene almost 10 years ago. Of the 4 games I've discussed today, I think Dead Matter has the greatest potential to provide us with a game that allows us to create our own stories in the style we each want, as well as provide new mods that take the entire survival shooter genre to new places, and do a decent job of looking great and working well too. However, the devs need to better demonstrate that to us over the next year. If not, I think despite its issues and aged look, DayZ with the expansion mod will continue to wear the crown of the ultimate realistic open world multiplayer survival shooter. Just buy it when it's on sale though. Do you agree? Which game do you see as the place to create your stories? Personally, I really like what QI Software are hoping to achieve with Dead Matter, and as a result, from now on, I'll be creating as much content and constructive criticism as I can to keep you up to speed with how the game develops. So, if you want to hear the latest Dead Matter news, please consider dropping a like and subscribing to my channel, and don't forget to hit that notification bell. Those of you that have followed my channel for a while now will also know that I've been providing updates about the new and as yet unnamed free-to-play game that's being developed by Embark Studios. There hasn't been any more news about that game lately, and the devs seem to be keeping pretty tight-lipped about it for now. But as soon as I hear anything, I'll provide an update for that game too. Meanwhile, thanks for watching one of my longest videos right through, and enjoy the rest of your day. Kia kaha, stay strong.
It's just the night and me.